Hey guys, welcome to our afternoon live feed. My name's Kortney. I'm the Senior Herpetology Keeper here at the Virginia Living Museum. Thank you all so much for joining us. We are going to be doing a live snake feeding today. So if that is something that you're interested in, that is absolutely awesome. We're so excited to have you here with us. If it's something that you don't want to see, it's totally fine too. We understand. We are going to be feeding a couple of our snakes, and we are feeding them frozen thawed food, so there won't be any live prey or anything like that. So just to give you a heads up of what's going to be happening here. But we wanted to highlight some of our ambassador snakes that we have here that Britt's kind of been filming for you and showing you for the last couple of minutes. So this is our collection of snakes that get to go out and educate the world. So we've got a whole variety of different species in here, big and small. So I'll be kind of highlighting a few of these guys for you, and hopefully they're nice and hungry and ready to eat, and kind of you can get a chance to see that up close. It might not be something that you've ever seen before if you don't have pet snakes at home. If you do have any questions at all throughout the filming, please don't hesitate to ask. We'll be happy to answer any questions. So I'll start by kind of showing you what it is that we're going to be feeding these guys. So like I said, they do get fed frozen thawed food. So this food is, comes in freezer bags, already euthanized by the company that distributes it. So just like you buy chicken from the grocery store. So we have got in here a variety of different sized food for the different sized animals. So we've got some rats, and they're wet right now because we just warm them up for these guys. Once they're thawed out, we warm them up so it's nice and natural. We've got some rats for the bigger guys. We've got some different sized mice, even some little itty bitty ones. And then we've even got some quail for a couple of our black rat snakes. They really enjoy these guys too. So all snakes are predators. They all eat meat. So in the wild, depends on the snake and where they live, but mostly snakes eat small rodents, sometimes birds. Occasionally you'll find a snake that lives in or near water that might specialize on eating fish or frogs and toads. So it kind of depends on what snake you're talking about and what their favorite food might be.
I know you kind of just answered this, but we have a question from Presley. He wants to know what their largest prey item might be.
Well, it depends on the species of snake, but something big like our large black rat snakes over here would take a rat or maybe a squirrel if they got the opportunity. But most of the time, snakes don't really go for food that's too big because it's very hard for them to catch it and handle it. So because they have to use their mouth to bite it, and then they quickly wrap around it, usually in the wild. So for a snake, it's just as easy to eat a bunch of small things if they have the opportunity, but they're pretty opportunistic. They kind of will take whatever they have the chance to eat. All right, any other questions yet before we get started?
Doesn't look like it quite yet.
Okay, so we're gonna start small here. We're gonna start with our mole king snake up here at the top. And if you wanna get a little look at him before we get started, these guys are a type of king snake. So all snakes that are part of the king snake family actually are specialists on eating other snakes. So we don't have other snakes to feed this guy. He will eat other things. And he's a ground-dwelling snake, so he would primarily be on the ground or underground for most of his life. And this is as big as he gets, so he is relatively small. So he's going to be getting some relatively small food. So we'll get his little mouse out of here. So we've got just a little one. This is called a fuzzy. And the mice are named based on kind of at what life stage they're at or what size they're at. So we're going to use some tongs here to feed these guys because they do sometimes get a little excited. I'm going to open this door here. And we'll see if he is willing to come out and get our little mouse here. So we'll kind of wiggle it around, make it look like it's alive and moving. Oh, you missed! Hold on, buddy. Hold on. Come here. No, don't get confused. That's my hand.
And so these snakes are all non-venomous right now, so
Yes.
Kortney is
Oh
able to
my
handle them
goodness.
safely.
So sometimes they get really excited. Maybe like your dog at home, and gets really excited and loses the food and can't figure out where it is. So he got a little excited there, but he's got it now. And so what he's gonna do is use those very movable jaws to work that food down into his mouth. Since they don't have hands and fingers to, you know, like we hold our hamburger with our hand and take a bite of it and eat it that way, they can't do that. They don't have any way to hold their prey. So he's just going to work those jaws back and forth and kind of walk each side forward and just kind of gulp that food right down all in one piece.
We have two related questions. One is, how many snakes do we have to teach people about snakes? That's from Evelyn. And then the other question is, what is our biggest snake?
So the first question, we have about 14 snakes here right now, and they are a variety of different species and have come from a variety of different places. So you might notice, if you're familiar with snake species, that some of these guys are not native to Virginia. Most of the Virginia Living Museum's exhibit animals are natives to educate you about what you would see here in the state. But some of our education snakes are not natives, and that's because they come from the pet trade, some of them. And some of them were rescues or come from various different places. And the biggest snake that we have here would kind of be a close tie between one of our black rat snakes that we'll see in just a minute and our pine snake. So both of those snakes are relatively thin in terms of their girth, but they are very long. So they are both probably about 6 feet in length, and that's pretty much full grown for those guys, and that's the biggest ones that we have here at the museum.
Are there any plans for us to get any other snakes?
Not right now. So we have plenty, and snakes can live anywhere from 10 to 15 years. So they're still living and going strong, so we don't want to get too many that we can't continue to maintain our level of care that we give these guys. Okay, buddy, that's all you get.
We have a few more questions, and we'll kind of work our way through them, so if we don't answer them right away, don't worry, we will get to it.
Yep.
Either during the video or afterwards in the comment section. First question on here is, do snakes smell their food? That's from Tyler.
Okay, yeah, so they do smell their food. So you notice as soon as I stuck that mouse in the cage, he was right at it. So they can absolutely smell their food. And they use both their nose, so they do have nostrils on the outside of their nose that they can smell. And they also use their tongue. So they use that tongue to flick out in the air and pick up little scent particles that are in the air, and then can determine actually which direction the food is based on that smell. So despite him getting really excited and kind of striking out randomly, if they're really trying, they can certainly smell very, very well. All right, so let me get our next food item ready. Let's go ahead and try our black rat snake here in the center. So as I mentioned before, this might be one of the largest snakes that we have here. These are very common throughout Virginia. You might see these guys when they're younger. They look a little different. They've kind of got this gray banding pattern, and then as they get older, they usually turn solid black. But they are one of the more common snakes, and even if you do see one of these guys, sometimes they can be in very precarious places. They'll be up in trees or on your gutter or on your roof or something funny. They're very good climbers, but they are completely harmless, and they're actually one of my favorite snakes because they can be, this guy is very, very friendly. He's a real sweetheart. So are you seeing okay through the glass?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a glare, so I apologize for that, but it should be all right. I don't want to get in your space.
No, I don't want him to get excited and see you
See
and
my
try
hand.
to bite you.
Yep. So even though these are not venomous snakes, we still treat them with respect and give them lots of space because sometimes they don't have the best aim.
Yep. So this guy's going to get a quail today, and he is smelling it for sure, and oh, there he goes. And now that he's got that in his mouth, let me see if I can get this glass out of your way.
Great.
There you go.
Perfect.
So once the snake's eating, you're not really in any danger. They're very focused on what they're doing. And these snakes are all of our snakes here at least are pretty friendly. They're very, very used to people. We're really not in any danger. Even if he would accidentally strike away and miss the food, if he got too close to me, he really wouldn't be interested in me to bite me. He just gets a little, sometimes these guys get a little overexcited, and that's why we use the long tongs as well.
Lo would like to know, how long does it take to digest the food?
That's a great question. So with snakes and reptiles in general, they are ectotherms, meaning they're cold-blooded, and their body metabolism depends a lot on their temperature. So with a snake that's eating a fairly large meal, it might take them a week or more to digest their food, and that's going to depend on the size of the food and also the temperature that they're able to get their bodies to. So if it was kind of chilly out in the following days, he might not be able to digest it quite as quickly, but if he was able to find a nice warm basking spot, and we provide all of our snakes with basking lights so that they can thermoregulate as needed, it's going to digest a little quicker.
There is a question, I just lost it because some more questions came in, so give me just 1 second. Debbie would like to know, does their skin match where they live?
That's a really good question. So the answer is sometimes. So typically snakes are camouflaged, just like a lot of other animals. Most species do have some sort of camouflage. But it's not always apparent what they're camouflaging to until you really see them in their natural environment. So one of the snakes that we'll see in a moment, he's kind of got this black and white modeling pattern, and you might think, oh, well, that's not very good camouflage, but when they're on the forest floor in the leaf litter, it actually helps them blend in really well. Other snakes, like milk snakes and coral snakes, have what's called aposomatic coloring, which is actually a warning signal to predators that they might be dangerous. So in the case of a coral snake, they are warning that they're very venomous, so predators shouldn't bother them. And in the case of a milk snake, they're actually mimicking the venomous coral snake. So a little bit different story there.
A question related to that, what is our most venomous snake?
In this area, we have 3, maybe 4 venomous snakes. So we have timber and canebrake rattlesnakes, we have cottonmouths, and we have copperheads. All of them are venomous in this region, and they have slightly different toxins, so it would be hard to kind of say which one is the most venomous. But relative to some other venomous snakes in the world, ours are pretty mild. So if you were ever to be unlucky enough to get to come in contact with a venomous snake and actually get envenomated by it, if you just go to the hospital, stay calm, go to the hospital, you're going to be fine. The venom of the snakes that we have in this region of the United States isn't, relatively, it isn't that bad. So unless you're already, have a compromised immune system, most people are just fine.
We have a question from Tyler. She says, we have ribbon snakes in our neighborhood. Some are fine, but some have been kind of aggressive. What is the best thing to do when you find an unwanted snake in your yard?
That is a great, great question, and I'm so glad that you're asking that, because we would always rather people ask than just to go ahead and kill it, because we don't like to see snakes get killed for any reason, really, especially if they're just perceived as a nuisance. So it's funny that you say the ribbon snakes are a little aggressive. If you're unfamiliar with ribbon snakes, they're a close relative of garter snakes. So they're relatively small snakes. They're kind of medium-sized, and they're pretty common in gardens. They feed on a variety of, small invertebrates, little mice and things, or even toads and frogs. But they can be a little aggressive, kind of a little Napoleon complex, I think. That small size, they feel like they have to defend themselves, sometimes very aggressively. So you can get a tiny little snake being a little bit of a bully sometimes if you come across one. But the best thing to do, especially for a small snake like that, is just to get like a bucket or something, or some type of plastic bin that you can sort of scoop the snake into with a broom or something very gentle, or a stick, and just move it to a different area. So you don't want to transport it far away, but if you have a wooded area that's within, you know, a half mile or so, you can just transport it gently to that area, and they should be fine and kind of go on their way.
All right, another question. Camden wants to know, where do they sleep?
Where do the snakes sleep? So wherever they can find a spot, really. So most snakes like to find kind of dark, quiet places tucked away. So a lot of times wood piles or abandoned building, like sheds and things like that underneath of buildings, can be a common place for snakes to sleep. Underground, sometimes snakes will use burrows of other animals. So they don't really dig their own burrows in most cases, but they may use holes that other animals have dug out to kind of hunker down and find a safe place. All right, so let's see what else we have here. We're gonna do our corn snake next. Just have to find the right size mouse here for him. This one should be good. So if you've watched us a couple weeks ago when we did the outdoor snake enrichment, you might have seen Athena here out in that, out in that cardboard box exploring the outside. So she gets very excited, so we'll try to aim her back this way. And she's going to get a little mouse here. Oh, get it. She's kind of got it. So what you might notice about our snakes here is that, unlike their wild counterparts, they don't always coil around their prey to constrict it, because they've kind of learned that they don't have to because it's already dead. But what they will do is sometimes kind of push their body forward. You're gonna push yourself out the door here, girl. There you go. So yeah, you might have noticed that, like, even our black rat snake, he just sort of took the food and gobbled it down. Same with Athena here. They don't really constrict like their wild relatives do, and that's just an artifact of being fed already dead prey. But in the wild, any snake like these guys that you've been seeing here, they would see a prey item, wait for it to get close, reach out and strike it and grab it, and then quickly coil their body around it and squeeze it until they could get a hold of it and eat it. So that's how they subdue their prey if it's a living prey item.
All right, we have a couple of questions now. You're being such a good girl. She's very funny. Jacob, age 9, would like to know, do we have any water snakes?
That's a great question. Yeah, we do actually have a water snake, a young water snake on exhibit right now. He's not in this room, so we won't be feeding him right now. But yeah, so that particular water snake is relatively small. And he's been with us for, I think, 2 years. So even though he's still only about a foot long, maybe 18 inches, he's about 2 years old or so. So he's got a lot of growing to do. And that guy is one of our snakes that actually does eat fish. Water snakes primarily eat fish in the wild, but they would opportunistically take things like frogs or toads that are living around the water as well.
Are all of the species we've seen so far found in Virginia?
No. Well, so far, yes, technically, because we've seen the mole king snake, the black rat snake, and now the corn snake. So technically, yes, those are all natives to Virginia, but not all of the snakes that we kind of have here in our collection. So if you were here from the very beginning, you might have seen a couple of ball pythons, or some milk snakes that were not necessarily native to Virginia. She's got quite the mouthful there.
Lucas would like to know, how can you tell if it's a boy or a girl?
That's kind of a tough question. So, for snakes, oh my goodness, she's like flipping upside down. Very dramatic. With snakes, it's kind of difficult to tell whether it's a male or female just from looking at it. So usually you have to, if you have a pet snake, you have to kind of take it to your vet and let them check. Or if you really know what you're looking for, sometimes you can look at the base of their tail. Boys tend to have a little bit longer tail sometimes, but unless you have two to compare side by side, it's kind of hard to tell.
All right, so since she is using these muscles right now, I'll ask this question. How do snakes make the food get to their stomach after the jaws move it down their throat?
Yeah, so you probably saw pretty well with her since she was kind of arching backwards in that way. Muscles, and they use their jaws to kind of walk it back and push it down their throat, and then they have those muscles in their neck and throat area and then all the way down their body, and they kind of twist and writhe, and it kind of pushes that food right down through their throat, and then once it gets down so far, it kind of just goes the rest of the way on its own. So the peristalsis of their stomach muscles just kind of take over and pull it down the rest of the way. So it's really just that initial getting it down the mouth that they got to work a little bit, and then after that, it's on its own. Got a little dirt in your mouth there, girl.
She is too cute. Presley wants to know how often we feed them.
So most of these guys here get fed about once a week. We have a couple that we feed every other week just because we do monitor how much they eat and how much they weigh. So if we notice that somebody's getting a little too chunky, we can kind of put them on a little diet. Or if anybody's losing weight, we can, up their diet a little bit. And then we've also got some snakes that eat, just like, your dog or maybe your kids at home are a little picky eaters. We have certain snakes that are picky eaters as well. So sometimes we have to provide special diets to certain of our snakes just so to get them to eat. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and, I'm sorry, didn't mean to scare you. Nope, you got to go back in. I'm going to go ahead and get her back in the door here. And while I'm kind of wrapping up, I'm going to, Britt, if you just want to spin around to our pine snake there, I'm going to let him eat this right when we're wrapping up the end of the show here. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. So glad that you got to see our snake collection. We've been wanting to show these guys off to you guys for a little while now. So if you have any more questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments and I can answer them when this is all done. And as always, thank you so much for joining us, and come back again tomorrow at 11 for our next feeding. Join us on all our natural education, on our website and all, and even consider donating to our emergency fund if you are feeling generous. So thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.